Hey everyone, welcome to episode 7 of Ask Yaritza. I have a special guest with me today, Dr. Traci Nicole Smith. Hey
Hi,
Tracy.
everyone.
So Tracy, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
I'm from New Orleans and I am gloating a little bit because the Saints won last night. We beat the Tom Brady Meister on Sunday Night Football. I have 25 years experience in the public school system, a PhD in special education, and I love to eat. I am like a foodie. I'm from New Orleans. I love to cook. I love to eat. I love to talk about cooking. I love to talk about eating. I like to have fun, and I love being here on this show.
She had me at food. I love food. But what's very important about today, and I just want to share this with you guys, is that everything that we do on Ask Yaritza is for our audience, is for you guys. And Tracy has been an audience member that she signs on every single week, and I love it. And so we thought it would be a great idea for her to share her question with us today, and we'll be here to answer it live. And so Tracy's question was, how do we facilitate compassionate, honest, open-minded discussions about racism and anti-racism with families and students? So, Tracy, before I begin with some strategies, what do you say to our audience about these discussions and conversations?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I have had a long trajectory of like how to deal with my emotions. So, Tracy in her early 20s was all over the place, very passionate, very spilling out everywhere. I'm going to fight for what I believe in, and I'm going to do it in a way where it's like in your face, loud. This is who I am. I'm loud and proud. And as Tracy's matured and mellowed out through the years, I realized that when you're loud, when you're in people's face, all they're hearing is the loud voice. They're not actually hearing your message. So, the first strategy I have to say is you have to know your triggers. Right now, we are in a climate where, like it or not, your triggers are just going to go off, right? There are so many emotional things going on right now. So, the first strategy that I have is know what triggers you, because you have to be able to contain your emotion when someone triggers you. Y'all know that not everybody's trying to have open, honest, calm conversations where they're trying to learn and they're trying to come from a place of, I just want to understand. Some people just want to incite, they just want the drama and they want to fuel that fire. So you have to be able to know what your triggers are and be able to take a step back. That's my first strategy.
I agree. And I always tell people that the first way that you have conversations about any topic, not only is it about knowing your triggers, but it's about confronting your own biases. And so if we think about Dr. Ibram Kendi, he wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist. He distinguishes the difference between a person who says they're not a racist and a person who says they're anti-racist, right? So a person who's not a racist, you're primarily in denial. So you still want to engage in these conversations, but you're most likely the person that supports all of the issues that exist today or all of the issues that impact only a certain group of people. While an anti-racist is going to try to get into the root of that problem, right? They're not going to say, okay, well, this happened because blacks are this way, or this happened because Native Americans are this way, right? They're going to say, this is an issue. I'm against these policies, and this is how I'm going to confront it. And so I also feel like the first strategy in engaging in any kind of conversations is about confronting those biases. Are you not a racist, or are you an anti-racist? So I really love that strategy, Tracy. So you said only that's the first. What's the next? What's the next?
Well, let me just say from what you said, I listened to his audiobook. So I will tell people, if you have read the book, get the audiobook because he narrates it. And I think there is an authenticity and there's an ownership and there's a power in him, the actual author. When he narrates it, I'm really confronting my bias. And I'm going to tell you one of the bias that I found in myself. He was talking about when you say, oh, all athletes, if they're black, they're going to be better runners. I'm telling you, every time I've ever been at a race when all the Kenyans come in, I'm like, the race is over, the Kenyans are here. And so I'm listening to this and I'm like, I do that. I do that. So I think the second piece is like not only just knowing your triggers, but you have to be self-reflective. Can you look at what someone else is saying and reflect it back to you and say, do I do this? And can you answer that in an honest way? I have always said the biggest fault that somebody can have is their inability to see themselves as other people see them. So my dad tells this story about how every year he would go in for an evaluation and they'd say, you're too hard on people. And the next year, you're too hard on people. In the 15th year, he finally heard it. And I thought, yes, Dad, I've been telling you this my whole life. But he finally heard it and was able to reflect it back to himself.
So that's very important because that also, and I know some folks dislike the use of this term, right? Ignorance. So when I began school, my mom didn't talk about the differences in color, the differences in culture, the differences in race. She just laid it out in one simple example. She said, school is a race itself, right? Just think of yourself as everyone's a turtle. You're going to start off at the same exact line and you're going to go slow, right? Because if we think about how turtles move, they move in slow movements. But not everyone is going to finish, right? She didn't say it was because of a race issue. She didn't say it was because of culture. She didn't say it was because of how people were raised by their parents. She's just saying you're going to start off at the same time, but everyone's not going to be at that finish line. And it was up to me to figure out the differences in people's experiences, but also to appreciate the differences in people's experiences. When I went to college, I was exposed to so many different cultures when I attended SUNY Albany. That was my first time actually sitting in classrooms with Caucasians and Asians and Africans, and we were all studying the same thing, Africana studies. And so to be able to have these conversations with folks who have never probably dealt with racism, now we have to talk about it, right? So it's not like they're picking on me just to have this conversation, but it's almost like we're reading this book together and we have to understand it together if you truly want to teach kids about their own history, right? And so I always seen it as if you don't or you can't understand other people's experiences, that's just plain ignorance, you know? And when we think about race issues in America, when we think about, you know, sorry to say this, but our past president, he's now in my mind a past president, right? We have to consider ignorance. And that's another part about being not a racist, right? This part of you're still supporting a lot of policies that prevent one specific group of people from actually being their best. And so, if you had a classroom, Dr. Smith, how would you engage in conversations about race in those classrooms? Well, in that classroom.
Well, my experiences are actually in the classroom or with students with significant disabilities. But when I became an instructional coach and when I became a coordinator, I actually sat in middle and high school classes and was able to learn from other teachers who are teaching a more diverse population. When you teach significant disabilities, even if they are inclusion, there's a certain portion of the day that's self-contained for obvious reasons, you know. But let me say that one of my mentors, who was a supervisor of mine, went to the EDD program, which I now think has morphed into a PhD program at Harvard. And she taught me about the Harvard Graduate School protocols. So I love protocols because there are hundreds of protocols. You can give roles, you can take turns listening and speaking, and you can also allow for a framework to exist while having an open-ended conversation. So we used in our classroom, like kind of the ones that everyone used, like think, pair, share, four corners, sit and stand. But I actually would like to share with y'all some of the resources that Harvard Graduate School, it's a list of a lot of different protocols that you can use that are also flexible tools, so you can use them, but you can also morph them for your needs. And some of the ones that I liked was like carousel brainstorm, where everybody, like, you put posters on the wall. And I think some people call this like a gallery walk, but everyone kind of walks around and looks at the prompt, and then they're able to comment on it and have questions. And then there's conversation. You set a timer. Um, Also, I like final word. I like how, sometimes you can just give someone the final word. I think that sometimes that gets a bad rap, right? You can say, like, you're a last word freak, like, you have to have the last word. But sometimes it's nice to be able to give somebody the platform for the last word. There's also chalk talk, where you use chalk, so you can use different kind of tools and utensils to make it interesting. Focus 4, there's tons of different resources, but I would like to share those resources because I think protocols are really important tools, because they allow you to design a way to have conversations that are meaningful and authentic, but you can also change it up. So it's not the tried and true ones that you're always seeing, like the Socratic method and fishbowl. And, we have these ones that people kind of defer to because they don't really know anything else. But Harvard has done a lot of research around using these.
So I love those protocols that you mentioned. Even, I think you said the carousel
Yeah.
brainstorm, and you did mention that it was similar to the gallery walk. Anyone that knows me knows I love gallery walks, but there's another strategy that I feel like I used it so many times that I know my students are probably like, well, when my cousin had you as a teacher, she said that you would use it. And it's called silent discussions. And you write several questions on different pieces of paper and you just hand them out to random students and they write their responses. And the kids could just put their initials on it. So other students may not know exactly who wrote what, but it allows them to have discussions and they just pass them off. So the papers are coming fast. So you never really know who wrote what because they're constantly moving. So it allows students to feel more comfortable. But I will also say is pose questions that would allow students to not only think about their own experiences but think about others' experiences. Like, the question, what does America mean to me? It can mean so much to so many different people, right? So they're not all going to say the same exact thing, but you get to get a gist of what the kid is thinking and what their hopes are for the future. So that's a way that we can actually create like authentic dialogues in the classroom, but it also helps you to understand if you need to take further action and speaking to that student one-on-one or perhaps the family, right? But also it leads to your next assignment. So if I knew that, Traci already did her research on politics and she mentioned, I want to change America to be more democratic in these ways, then I may challenge Traci a lot more in the next course, right? I may ask you questions that's just about democracy or politics. So it'd be a way to guide our students academically, but also to become more critical thinkers.
I love that, because I think that that's a really great way to also, when someone doesn't believe what you believe in and you're about love and acceptance and equity and peace and justice and freedom, and you have people in your class that are about hate and oppression, if you use your strategy, that's exactly right. You'll be able to figure out that you need to have one-on-one dialogue. And then if you have that with the family, and then you have some pushback from the family, that will give you a very big indicator of what kind of battle that you're against, as far as where the genesis of those ideas are coming from. And you know that it's not just the student, and that this is something that is in the family. And then that becomes a different conversation where you have to explain, as a teacher, you have to present all perspectives, because that's your job, to create critical thinkers that can look at different pieces of information that they don't agree with and then argue for and against it, even if it's not what they inherently believe.
Traci, you hit the nail on the head. Even before this session today, I was watching several documentaries on Ruby Bridges, right? And, she spoke about the idea of never being upset with another student, another white student, because their reasons for not playing with her or, going to visit her in a classroom or to even acknowledge her existence was because their parents told them not to. So it's almost like, when you have these conversations with students, it doesn't necessarily have to be about race. It could be about anything. What would you change in your community? If you could change something in my classroom today, what would it possibly be? But just giving a person a chance to express themselves on anything. It could be, what kind of ice cream do you like? Then you get a better understanding of who that person is, what their interests are, what they're like. And honestly, that is culturally responsive teaching, and it's how to be an anti-racist.
Absolutely. I love that. And Ruby Bridges lives like 2 minutes from my house. No joke.
What?
Yes, she's a Gretna girl. So,
I have
and
to
if
come
you ever
visit.
have an, yeah, if you ever have an opportunity to watch the interview with her teacher that taught her one-on-one,
Yep.
that is such a powerful. Just it makes me that actually makes me feel so good as a white woman. What a compassionate woman. Love that.
Traci, I love, love, love you. Audience, I love, love, love you. And we're at the end mark. So I want to thank you all for episode 7. Traci, we can talk all night long. Guys, don't miss out Friday's blog. I'll include all of the Harvard Grad School activities that Traci mentioned tonight, plus more. Thank you guys, and good night.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone. Who dat?